Technology, the internet, GPS in the palm of your hand, autonomous operation.
Technology is a driver of our times. Since its founding in 1958 in the midst of the Cold War, DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, has been a driver of technology. Welcome to Voices from DARPA, a window onto DARPA's core of program managers. Their job? To redefine what is possible. My name is Ivan Amato, and I'm your DARPA host. For this episode, the last one I will host, I decided to collect observations that program managers have shared with me and you listeners since 2016 as they reflected on their time at the agency. So many of them told me that the job was the best, most fun, most rewarding, most impactful job they had ever had, even though they knew from the start that they would only have the job for a few years. That's how DARPA rolls. You can get the dream job and bring your new blood to it, but then you need to hand that dream job off to yet some newer blood. Let me start with the words of Peter Heim, the agency's deputy director, who in a previous stint at DARPA, from 1999 to 2003, served as a program manager overseeing programs in electronic warfare and electronic communications. I love the way he described the program manager's job to me back in June of 2020.
A DARPA program manager quite literally invents tomorrow. DARPA program managers have the leeway, the authority to find the best teams in the world to work on a particular problem, and then they have the authority and capabilities to drive to achieve the results that are of interest to them. DARPA is a place where the program managers are the ones who really drive the ship. The office directors and the front office, our job is to make it possible for them to do that, to give them the tools, and to help them achieve their goals. A DARPA program manager frames a research problem with a plausibility story, with a deep awareness and knowledge of the state of the art and that problem, a very careful idea with use cases and such as to why that problem is of great importance to national defense and to our military, and then how it can be executed as a research program, and then how progress will be measured and assessed, and then who will benefit from the results, how will those results transition into practice. And again and again and again for 60 years now, DARPA program managers have set up programs, have run them, and quite literally that rigor, that passion that a program manager brings to the job will be saving lives 5, 10, 15 years from now.
I am particularly grateful to Tyler McQuaid, who was a Big Ideas program manager in the agency's Defense Sciences Office in September 2016, when he sat down with me in a studio on the 13th floor of DARPA headquarters in Arlington, Virginia, for my very first podcast recording. I wanted to start with Tyler because my aim was for the podcast to be accessible to a wide audience, and I knew he would say things like this.
A coconut. It smells the way it does because of chemistry.
But he also revealed that tantalized what-if mentality that I would encounter over and over again throughout my podcast recordings with program managers, or PMs as they also are known.
DARPA is that one place where we are thinking about innovation unconstrained. Like, where can we go?
Yeah, that. Where can we go? That could be a tagline for DARPA. Dev Palmer was another podcast guest early in the series. At the time, in late 2016, he was a program manager in the agency's Microsystems Technology Office, or MTO. He would leave DARPA the next year, but in 2020 he came back, as PMs also sometimes do, to become MTO's current deputy director. Back in our podcast discussion, he heaped a whole lot of love about working at DARPA.
Coming to DARPA is like grabbing the nose cone of a rocket and holding on for dear life. It's a fast-moving place that has a significant impact on the trajectory of technology for the nation, and being part of that is an incredible thrill. The idea that you can come up with a technical idea that's interesting to you and create a community to pursue that idea is an experience you won't get anywhere else. You can take flyer bets on crazy things like integrating magnetics with semiconductors, and people will actually soldier up and tell you how they're going to do it.
Blake Beckstein has followed a similar path to Dev Palmer's. He too started out as a program manager, in his case in 2016 in the Biological Technologies Office, and later took on some management responsibilities. I recorded him when he was still a newbie. Blake has one of those gleams in his eye that makes anyone think this guy is going to do something amazing. After all, one of his ambitions has been to protect nothing less than the food supply from both natural and engineered threats, which is another way of saying biological warfare.
Well, I came to DARPA because I saw a fantastic opportunity for my research community. The DARPA mission is unlike things that I've done in the past, because the DARPA mission is to look at high-risk, high-reward projects that could benefit humanity in sort of that 20 to 50-year time frame. And it also gives an opportunity to de-risk some programs and some projects so that they can actually come to light and see use. So when the opportunity to come to DARPA presented itself, I thought it was just this awesome chance to do some really great science. And I was encouraged because I was asked to think about things that traditionally weren't funded very well. You know, the positive that can come out of this and the world-changing abilities that we're going to gain is incredible.
Beckstein came into DARPA with an uncommon specialty and interest in agricultural biotechnology and food security. Fariba Fehr, who was a DARPA program manager from 2014 through 2018 in the agency's Defense Sciences Office, also brought in a unique mindset. And she was nervous about it. She was skeptical about how a mathematician like herself would fit in. In my podcast featuring Fehr, which aired in March of 2017, I asked her what she thought she might be able to do at DARPA that she could not do elsewhere.
I say DARPA is probably the best place to be if you are an applied mathematician. In fact, I just say if you're a mathematician and would like to solve problems, because one of the greatest thing about DARPA is that there is this wealth of information, wealth of problems that are important, and I have to say they're very, very cool. The coolness factor for problems to solve for a mathematician here is enormous, because you feel that not only you're solving a problem that has importance, there's certainly broader impact as far as, you're solving important problems in national security, but you also feel like the problems are so rich that in some ways there's so much to contribute. The richness of the problem is maybe the biggest driver, a motivating factor for anybody, certainly for a mathematician. And I just want to add, and I've been saying that to my friends, to my colleagues, anybody who would listen, that why mathematics is actually very important to DARPA, and encourage them to come, future program managers, is that when you're encountered by important problems and you see that your ideas, the role you have as a mathematician, that not only you try to look at these particular problems, but you try to abstract out and coming with different representation that would yield better solution for these problems. So you basically see that your ideas are at work. I mean, what better satisfaction are there?
Hear that, mathematicians out there? Don't forget about DARPA. Could be just the place for you. Wade Shen, whose nearly 5-year stint as a program manager, or PM for short, ended in 2019. He reveled in the way DARPA embraces the most fundamental kind of scientific research in an R&D continuum that can lead to the highest technologies of all.
Obviously, even within the U.S. government, there are a number of organizations that fund basic research, that fund applied research, that fund various projects along that continuum. And I think DARPA has a very unique role. It's a role that spans the gap between basic research and applied science. Oftentimes, we're looking for the applications that seem impossible, whether it's launching drones off of flying aircraft or detecting human trafficking online. All of these things are things that were emerging capabilities 3 or 4 years ago, but now have proven to be possible. And so DARPA is in a very unique place that allows us to push the technology beyond the theoretical stages to the point where we can actually see where the applications are going to be. So we're not builders of the ultimate technology, right? At the end of the day, we fund the research, and that research eventually becomes productized in other forms. But if you look at the progression of robotics and self-driving cars, all of those AI technologies were curated out of DARPA programs early on, and have subsequently, a 10-year horizon after that, become productizable. Industry has been able to take it up. So we serve a very crucial role, and the reason that we can serve that role is the program managers themselves. These folks come with the ideas, and they can see the horizon.
Jonathan Fouts, who from 2015 to 2019 brought interests in the social sciences and social psychology to DARPA as a program manager in the Information Innovation Office, expressed to me in the middle of his PM stint a multifaceted enthusiasm for his temp job at the agency.
DARPA's such an amazing place that it's hard when you're in a field doing research and development and leading other people in doing it to not know about DARPA, to not know about the amazing things that DARPA has done. So for me, it was very natural to say, boy, I could imagine at some point, appropriately in my career, I would love to serve at DARPA and spend those 4 or 5 years of my life here helping. Arriving at DARPA, there's a sense of incredible empowerment that with the wherewithal that you get to really make some extraordinary things happen. Not just, oh, I'm going to run a program, but no, I'm going to, write a seminal book with the best people in the world. I am going to change a whole discipline. It's an amazing feeling. And when you do all of that and you tie it back to national security and feeling like you're serving your country, it's a great feeling.
As you already have heard, a PM job at DARPA is temporary. 3 or 4 years, maybe 5, is typically what you get. That's not job security, but it has been a catalyst for both individual and institutional achievement.
I wholeheartedly agree that one of the things that makes DARPA a successful organization is this idea of bringing program managers in for a short amount of time, get the work done that they envision getting done, and then leave in order for new blood to come into the culture and into the organization. And it's important.
That's Scott Werzbanowski of the Tactical Technology Office. I recorded a podcast episode with him this past April, just a month before he finished his 4-year PM gig.
By understanding that you have a very limited time in a very special place like DARPA, it becomes your priority. You focus all of your time and attention, day, night, weekends, on whatever these projects happens to be. It becomes a passion, it becomes your life. And you can do so for a 2 to 4 or 5 year period where this is everything that you're focused on. But eventually, human nature takes over, and eventually people either get burnt out or they no longer have newer ideas that need to be brought to bear. And that motivation isn't necessarily gone, but it is time for other people to come in with their new ideas. And there's another nuance that happens too. You have a program and you've worked this program for a couple of years and you're focused on making it successful. But sometimes a program manager can get biased. And by bringing in new blood or a new program manager into a particular case, they may see it in a different light and may be able to make changes that the other program manager wasn't aware of, or maybe just decided that it'd be better to go down a different path. It's a double-edged sword, but I think in general, doing so where you're bringing in new program managers in to take care of programs that are ongoing as well as bringing their own in is really what makes us such a great place to work.
Peter Heim, when he was serving as acting director of DARPA during part of 2020, outlined what he thought were some of the most important institutional traits that made DARPA so successful. One of them was that temporary nature of the program manager role, but there are others.
DARPA, or originally when it was ARPA back in 1958, somehow the framers, the people who put this machine together, got a few things really absolutely right. And it's my view, those few things that have enabled DARPA to succeed over 60 years now and delivering and continuing to deliver and invent tomorrow for the department. So the first of these 3 things is that everybody who works on the technical side of DARPA, program managers, office directors, front office folk, we're all temporary by design. We come, we spend 4 years or so here, and then we leave. We come from industry, we come from universities, we come from elsewhere in the government, we come from the military services. We do our job, we push hard, and then we leave. That's one thing. DARPA also is a projects agency, so there are no standing activities. DARPA is not always going to do X or Y. It's continuously changing. I'd like to say that in some ways DARPA is framed to catch the zeitgeist or to be in it and to drive to the next level. So it's in the zeitgeist, and in some ways it is the zeitgeist. It captures it exactly. And that's what these two things enable us to do. People, ephemeral people, we're all temporary, and project-based. And then the third piece is DARPA has no assets of its own. We have no laboratories, we have no test facilities, we have no factories, we don't have a standing army of anything. So and it's perfectly framed as an institution to continuously track and drive and push the frontiers of knowledge applied to problems of real interest and importance to the military.
For Major Christopher Orlowski, who was a program manager in the Tactical Technology Office when I spoke with him in the fall of 2017, it was access to the collaborations it takes to move audacious ideas toward real technology that was special about the PM job.
Biggest thing I've learned since being a program manager is that the innovation and collaboration it's a team effort. I don't do it by myself. There's no way I could begin to fathom to manage all these programs and all these efforts that are under them by myself. So I have a great team, a great support team that helps, who are technical experts in the field, in their fields, and that ultimately even us is not the ones that do it. It's the engineers and scientists at the companies and universities and defense contractors that we fund that are the ones that ultimately are going to bend metal and write code and they deliver these capabilities to the warfighters. But I can't forget the warfighters either, because their invaluable advice, recommendations are also part of a loop. So it's a collaborative ecosystem that results in the innovation that provides these new capabilities.
It is those warfighters that were foremost in the mind of Rosa Alejandra Lukashev when she joined the Defense Sciences Office in 2017. DSO program managers conceive of and oversee some of the agency's most fundamental science projects, in her case, in the way collections of electrons behave in materials, among other really fundamental stuff. I spoke with her when she was about halfway through her 3.5-year run as a PM.
As an American, not by birth but by choice, I have a deep love for this country, a deep admiration for this country, and a sense of duty regarding, trying to help this country to continue be what it is right now. And the best way, in my opinion, is to try to see, okay, what are the needs of the people that are at the forefront of defending the country? That would be the armed forces in general, right? And so what is that is going to make that difference in terms of, advances in technology, advances in research that can help this mission? And clearly, DARPA is at the forefront of all of these funding agencies in that particular direction. So I was very, very intrigued and curious and interested in being part of this particular organization for that reason.
Before Colonel Matthew Hepburn came to DARPA's Biological Technologies Office to work on the challenge of responding far more rapidly than ever before to threats from both known and new infectious diseases, he had been pushing that goal in policy jobs in circles. That's when he got a call from the then DSO director, Jeff Ling, who asked Matt if he wanted to come to DARPA where he could try and turn policy into action, in his case, into the technologies it will take to prevent pandemics.
One of our mantras at DARPA is this idea of inspiring creativity and new solutions to problems. And oftentimes we say by sort of recruiting in people who have not traditionally thought about our problems to help us with those solutions. And so, I would love for the listeners of this podcast to be more inspired to address the problems in infectious diseases. And what I mean by that is, I always say people like me, we've invested our entire careers and our life work into this, and we have deep knowledge of the subject. But I love the thought of people that have expertise in computer science, in mathematics, in what we would say, well, maybe those fields aren't necessarily obviously related. I think that's how we're going to solve the infectious diseases problems of the 21st century. And so when I speak on this, it's one part recruiting. And it's especially recruiting those that may not have all of the biases of the traditional experts in infectious disease to come up with a creative solution to solve it.
Matt must have really liked his DARPA job because he left in 2019 after 6 years, a long timer in DARPA terms. For about half of the time that Hepburn was working in the Biological Technologies Office, Brad Ringheisen had been working first as the office's deputy director, then as the director. I met Ringheisen in March 2020, just as the World Health Organization declared that the spread of SARS-CoV-2 infections had grown into a global pandemic, into COVID-19. Partly because of the programs Hepburn had worked on, Ringheisen and his team of PMs were in a position to deploy the DARPA model of research and development to this new multifaceted crisis.
DARPA plays a really important role for the entire government, quite honestly, but specifically for the Department of Defense, in its ability to predict what is emerging as threats to both our warfighters and our DoD personnel, but also to the country as a whole. And that has been something that's been persistent through the entire lifetime of DARPA. But specific to infectious disease and emergent disease, this is something over the last 2 decades, DARPA has been there. We've learned what is needed and what is required to be able to fight the types of outbreaks and pandemic that we're seeing right now. With some amazing program managers, amazing forethought that's happened back 5, 10, even 15 years ago, program managers started thinking about an ideal world where we could have a rapid response platform where we could, instead of having to develop vaccines over the course of years, maybe even decades in time, wouldn't it be great if we had a world where we could reduce that research and development process down to a matter of potentially weeks or months, rather than having to wait on that tremendously long time frame, which we know, living through what we're living through right now, it's just too long.
Even though the job of DARPA program manager is by definition temporary, some PMs like the job so much they come back. Dev Palmer, who we heard from earlier, had done that. So did David Gunning, whose fingerprints are all over the ascent of Siri and the entire category of digital assistants.
I've been here 3 times because to me it's one of the most fascinating jobs you can have. You're at the pinnacle of new technology development. You have such a broad view of what's going on, and DARPA gives you this incredible freedom to pursue what you see as, a vision on where things should go.
Ann Fisher, a PM in the Defense Sciences Office, is another several-timer at DARPA. She got her start as a so-called CETA contractor, working for none other than Tyler McQuaid. He was the PM I featured in the very first episode of this podcast. CETA, S-E-T-A, stands for Science, Engineering, and Technical Assistant. CETAs, who often bring in PhD, postdoc, and top-tier professional experience to the job, work closely on the programs with the program managers. They're essential parts of the team. When I asked Fisher during a podcast conversation in 2018 if there was something I had failed to ask her, this is how our conversation went.
Well, you didn't ask me how fun this was.
Well, tell me, how fun is it?
Well, this being the podcast, but also life in general at DARPA. And I say that because we get to interact with amazing, top-notch scientists on a daily basis, multiple times a day. And that's really exciting, and it's really fun, and it's an amazing opportunity. And those are the folks that are doing the hard work to implement all of the ideas that we might generate here, really put them to practice. And again, from the perspective of coming to work every day and being humbled by that and being so excited and energized by what they have to bring in terms of their ideas and their talents.
Some program managers get the DARPA bug earlier than others. Few have gotten that bug earlier than current BTO program manager Eric Van Gessen, whose portfolio of programs are anchored in the molecular biology of disease and health. He told me in our podcast conversation in 2020 that DARPA had been on his mind since the 1980s.
When I was in middle school, I would ride my bike over to the library in Falls Church across from Marshall High School in Northern Virginia. And I would go in there and I would read Popular Mechanics and I'd read car magazines. And I started reading stories about DARPA. That was when we were starting to hear about some of the computing technologies and the networking technologies that were coming out of DARPA as part of the unveiling of the internet. And so that got me interested.
In 2020, I spoke with current DSO program manager Mark Roble, who hadn't had DARPA on his mind since he was a teenager the way Van Gessen did, but he had long known about the agency when he started his PM stint in March 2019. 1 year later, when it became clear that SARS-CoV-2 had spread into a pandemic, Roble began pivoting a program under his wing known as Sigma Plus to see if the threat detection technology that was its focus could be adapted for early detection of viruses.
DARPA does amazing things, and as a federal employee for going on 12 years, I think now, and as a active duty service member for 22 years, very few places in government do you have the real capacity to make change, to innovate, to discover, and to do amazing things. And DARPA is one of those places. And it's literally a dream come true to be a program manager here. Never in my wildest dreams did I think this was actually going to come to be, and now I'm here. And it's been an awesome year. It was an awesome year when I detailed, and I'm hoping for another few years of awesomeness before I wrap up my tenure here.
Like Roble, John Francis Mergen, a current program manager in the Information Innovation Office, had a long career before coming to DARPA. He had long thought about a stint at the agency, and when the time was right for him, he finally found himself in a technology playground that was as fun as he had hoped it would be.
Coming to DARPA was something I'd always wanted to do, but I needed to wait for the right time in my career. I wanted to be sure my son had graduated from college. I wanted to achieve certain milestones and also get some people in place at my old employer to make sure that the research could carry on. And I also wanted to have the right set of ideas for programs. I didn't want to show up and wander around for a year trying to come up with an idea for a program. So I had my little basket of program ideas, and I came in the door. I was all excited. I started up, and part of the reason for coming to DARPA is there's several neat things that DARPA program managers get to do. One, they get to talk with other people who are in the organization and get their ideas and get them completely unfiltered. But the other one is you can tap into researchers all across the globe. You call up and say, "Hi, I'm from DARPA, and I was wondering what you were thinking about something." And usually the conversation will run far longer than you ever anticipated or you ever even planned, but you're sorry when it's over. I've been able to talk with researchers at Caltech, at MIT, and they'll call back with another idea afterwards. That is unbelievably exciting. And for someone like me, having that kind of access is the greatest entertainment I could ever hope for. The other big piece about this is you get to go see their labs and you got to go see stuff happening. And as you can guess from being a pilot and from being a ham radio operator, I love to touch the technology. I love to play with it. I love to do things with it.
Over and over again, I heard from program managers a sense of responsibility to warfighters, to the nation, to the taxpayers, a sense of privilege and of gratitude that they, of all people, got to do this job, the PM job. Here's how Tristan Mcclure Begley, whose current portfolio of programs in BTO are all about helping warfighters remain healthy and heal from mental and physical injuries, expressed it to me this past July.
Program managers exist in a privileged space. We are given a lot of freedom with which to make decisions, with which to resource efforts in order to produce research projects that are very near and dear to us. There is a lot of, I would dare to say that, program managers are very personally invested in the programs that they are responsible for. And so, we have a tendency to take things personally because there is that degree of relationship that exists between the ideas, the problems we're trying to solve, the reasons why we're trying to solve those problems, and ultimately how the research is done. And I would say that despite that emphasis on the program manager as this sort of monolithic entity responsible for all of this fantastic research and pushing at the boundaries of what is currently possible, I would also say that it has been part of my experience that this is a profoundly collaborative agency, that I spend a substantial amount of time in very productive discussions with my colleagues here at the agency, getting very different perspectives on a number of fundamental issues and questions, as well as the collaborations that I have both with the other governmental agencies, the end users, who is ultimately going to take the thing that I tried to invent and turn it into some real enabling capability for national security, for rehabilitation, for treatment, for restoration in our veteran population, in the broader civilian population, and then also with the researchers themselves. That part of the job of a DARPA program manager is not just coming up with clever ideas and setting things in motion, but also continuing to work and pay attention to what the research is producing. What does it tell you about your initial hypothesis and any assumptions that you made, and which of those things are ultimately going to be rejected? We don't learn as much from success as we do from failure. And so sometimes you just have to be mindful and do your best to establish the appropriate balance between things that are practically impossible for a reason versus things that are practically impossible just due to a lack of innovation.
Talk to just about any program manager, and they will tell you that DARPA, as an institution, has enough of a track record to claim it has a special sauce, a special institutional culture that makes it about as impactful as any player can get in the innovation ecosystem. Here's how Tim Chung, a PM with the Tactical Technology Office, puts it.
I definitely believe DARPA has a secret sauce that it has continued to been able to generate both the ideas, but also create and execute and realize those ideas. I think on the one hand, certainly from the Tactical Technology Office, from which I hail, we really love seeing technologies demonstrated. So systems being brought together and realized in some sort of field test or demonstration. And I think that's one end. On the other hand, we're interested in creating whole new, foundations, whole new areas of research that hadn't really been thought about. And I think that being able to span that spectrum and do it in the context of 100 or so program managers across 300 programs is pretty phenomenal.
During a podcast recording in the spring of 2020, Chung floated a neologism that captures some of the institutional audacity DARPA is known for. It also relates to part of the draw for scientists and engineers like Chung, who have been the masterminds behind challenge-based programs, including most recently for Chung, the Subterranean Challenge, known for short as Sub-T. That challenge was all about seeding a research community that will be able to develop autonomous and robotic systems that work in natural and human-made underground settings for national defense missions and for humanitarian tasks such as disaster response.
I'd say one of the ways I'd describe DARPA, this was, one of my colleagues had previously described research this way, is there are a lot of folks out there that might say some research is impossible or some vision is impossible. And my colleague at the time said, actually, no, it's not impossible. It's rather, it's unpossible. It's just that it hasn't been done yet. It's not that it can't be done. It just hasn't been done yet. And I like to embrace that philosophy in everything that I try to touch, in the sense that just because it hadn't been done before is not proof that it can't be done. In fact, it's a challenge to say that maybe I'm the one who can do it. And DARPA really gives us both the tools and the inspiration and the kind of community, I'd say, both the support, but also my, program manager colleagues. When I see all the amazing things that they're making possible, it makes me think that the things that once might have been considered impossible are simply just opportunities.
For Bruce Draper, a program manager in the Information Innovation Office, one of the most exciting ways these provisional impossibilities Chung referred to unfolds is the way a DARPA project can spawn entirely new and lasting fields of research and development.
At a place like DARPA, you can create programs that help define the field and create intellectual communities of people that are trying to tackle brand new problems. And that's an opportunity. It's something you can do at DARPA that you just can't do anywhere else.
That community building opportunity resonates with Sergey Bratas, an I2O program manager colleague of Draper's, who came to the agency from academia and has been intent on recruiting performers from that sector into his cybersecurity programs.
It has been behind several DARPA successes that I've experienced personally to define a new direction, define a new trend, and put some grant funding behind that trend in order to get academia to listen to, well, this is the need that you might be missing. This is a cool thing that might, with time, create its own first-tier publication venue of journals and conferences. And there, I believe DARPA has been greatly successful.
And talk about things that have never been done before. From 2016 to 2020, Mike Fiddy was a program manager in the Defense Sciences Office, where he took on programs with goals as mind-soaring as extracting propulsive energy from quantum mechanical fluctuations inherent in space itself. In a discussion soon before he left the agency in June 2020, Fiddy pointed out to me that the researchers, that is, the performers in DARPA speak, that program managers contract with to work on projects, tend to feel that they are part of a team with crucial goals to achieve, and so they become motivated to perform not just for themselves, but really for the country.
I think there's something special about DARPA in the eyes of our performers, as well as those of us fortunate enough to work for the agency. I think that rapid turnover, that sense of urgency, that very well-organized structure that DARPA has makes performers feel that they are engaged in something special when they get funded and they want to give it their best. And I do see a lot of performers who put in really a lot of extra effort to make those deadlines, keep us informed, stay on track. They understand that we're usually in an arrangement with them where, as program managers, we're in regular contact and we're involved month by month, quarter by quarter with what they're doing, and they don't want to disappoint. And they understand that the program has a goal, and the goal was approved for good reason, because it's addressing some need that the DoD has.
Air Force Lieutenant Colonel C. David Lewis is an African-American program manager. To get where he is, he had to overcome systemic racism and to seize those opportunities that did arise, whenever and wherever they did.
Because there's a phrase that we use in the Air Force all the time, and that is bloom where you're planted. Of course, being in the military, we don't get to choose where we live all the time. We don't necessarily get to choose what assignments we get assigned to. And so the phrase is to say that no matter where you are, do the best that you can do, because it's going to help out the country. And you always have to be prepared for when opportunity knocks. Because, opportunity, in my opinion, shows up at everyone's door. The question is, what have you been doing to prepare for that opportunity when it comes? It took a lot of preparation, pretty much, I think, over my entire Air Force career up until that point to be ready for this opportunity, and it's worked out thus far.
Part of the opportunity Lieutenant Colonel Lewis alludes to here has to do with the privilege that program managers enjoy to devote taxpayer money, a precious resource, to tough and risky problems that are worth investing in because of how much could be gained for the nation by the solutions to those problems. In late 2020, I spoke with program manager John Waterston, a former nuclear submarine crew member and now captain in the U.S. Navy Reserves. He thinks of DARPA as something like a venture capital fund with the mission to further the cause of national security.
I feel what we do at DARPA is being a venture capital fund, right? We are a place where you can bring ideas and mature them so that they have the most impact going forward. So at DARPA, we don't have excessive bureaucracy. We're able to move fast. We got this advantage that everyone's motivated to succeed and get ideas that have the most impact. And that's what makes me excited every day that I come to work. It makes every day different. And those two things kind of keep me pushing, now for almost 4 years.
Make that 5 years now. In our podcast conversation, Waterston pointed to yet another crucial ingredient of DARPA's unique success at conceiving of new technologies and capabilities and ushering them toward realization. That ingredient is an embrace of the valuable lessons that come from failure.
I'm not judged on success of my program, so I'm very comfortable operating with a lot of risk. I've had a lot of failures along the way as a PM at DARPA. We've gotten rid of programs, things didn't succeed. They didn't fire me. What they did is say, what did we learn from it, and how do we make the next iteration of what we do better? It's often said to fail fast and we take those losses and we turn them into something valuable. And that what makes DARPA a very special place.
That celebration of risk-taking and positive valuation of failure are also part of what BTO program manager Seth Cohen identifies as one of DARPA's most empowering traits. And in a podcast episode we posted in February of last year, he noted with interest how other government agencies sometimes try to emulate the DARPA model.
And so DARPA plays this very special role because it is known for being a cutting-edge agency. It's known for pushing the boundaries. And though our performers are highly qualified and highly skilled individuals, and teams of individuals rather, they don't necessarily have to have shown that they can do this yet. It's the latest and greatest, and in many ways can be the most riskiest research. And that's an important role I think that DARPA fulfills, is pushing that very cutting edge, allowing people to take chances, to try crazy ideas that are still grounded in good science and good concepts, but that might be outside the comfort zone of a lot of other parts of the federal government to fund. And I think that's why you see, and this has been spoken about for many administrations now, other federal agencies trying to emulate DARPA.
Cohen told me he could not be more grateful for the opportunity to be part of an organization that others aim to emulate.
I have to really say that DARPA has been, as many people told me it would be, one of the best places I could ever imagine working. It is a fascinating agency filled with incredibly smart, motivated people who create an incredibly supportive work environment. So I'm very pleased and honored to have been part of DARPA and to continue to be part of DARPA.
Even though program managers, as short-timers, have that hair-on-fire urgency about doing their work, they also are working on hard problems with long time horizons. It's a disconnect that many of them, including Whitney Mason, who was a program manager in the Microsystems Technology Office, actually found to be tantalizing. Something about contributing now to a return on investment that will take decades to unfold.
The thing that I think is the most amazing and the most impactful part about DARPA is that I get to throw the dart really hard. Right? I get to say, I've done some research, I've talked to people, I think it's going to work, but it might not, right? Failing fast is an option if you learn something. And so you really get to explore the space of what might be impactful 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, as opposed to having to make sure that it works, which is also a valuable job. But my technology doesn't have to work in 2 years. It doesn't have to go in a tank in 2 years. It can be way out there and far-reaching, and I think change the world.
I often heard from program managers during my podcast discussions that they viewed DARPA as an ideal of technology innovation, yet it was an ideal that was real and operational. One of them is Gordon Keeler, a program manager since 2017 in MTO, where he and colleagues are doing their darndest to keep the mad 70-year sprint of the microelectronics and microsystems technology revolutions going far into the future. This is what he told me.
I had no doubt really in my mind. DARPA was clearly sort of the pinnacle of doing innovative scientific research and development and leading the community to go do new things.
New things indeed. That's DARPA's thing. And Keeler speaks for everyone else at the agency when he invites innovators out there to think about collaborating with DARPA.
Good ideas come from everywhere. And you mentioned the limited tenure that we have at DARPA. We're always looking for new people. And so if you've got ideas, I care a lot about optical microsystems, so for sure come see me if you've got ideas in this area. But, get involved. DARPA is not one person or one place. It's a collection of people that are excited about moving technology forward. And so, maybe you want to be a program manager, maybe you want to work as a CETA, maybe you want to be a performer and keep doing research, but reach out and get involved with DARPA.
You might say that DARPA Director Stefanie Tompkins has gotten involved with the agency. She runs the place now, but her current position is just one of the 4 jobs she has had at DARPA, and she says the program manager position is one of the best.
I've been extraordinarily lucky to have so many different jobs at DARPA. I've been a program manager, I've had leadership roles in technology offices, I even served a year as the acting deputy director, and then I left DARPA forever a few years ago, or so I thought. Don't get me wrong, getting a chance to come back and serve this organization as its director is a tremendous privilege. But the program manager is the center of DARPA. The PMs, each and every one of them, have a chance to change the world. And I can't think of any simpler way to put it. They come in with ideas that they think will make the nation more secure. They put together their plans and very quickly get an army of brilliant people working on those ideas. The rest of us at DARPA, our job is just to support the program managers so they can get on with their job of changing the world. It's just such an amazing place. I can't think of anywhere else I have ever been or ever heard of that works quite like this one and with as much freedom. It's just extraordinary.
Thanks, listeners, for sharing this time with me and with some of the program managers who have joined me over the past 5 years to capture some of the psychological, sociological, and cultural foundations that underlie DARPA's exceptional place in the innovation ecosystem. I look forward to handing the Voices of DARPA podcast off to my colleagues in public affairs and hearing the innovative new ways they are likely to take it. So, listeners, goodbye for now. For more information about DARPA's entire portfolio of technology development programs and the program managers that oversee them, visit darpa.mil. And for links that enable you to download all episodes of the Voices from DARPA podcast, go to the Voices from DARPA page on DARPA's website.